Well, can you have a side-mounted scope on your rifle and expect to zero the darn thing? Will that even work? We're going to find out on this episode of Ron Spomer Outdoors Podcast. Hey everyone, thanks for joining me. We have some interesting questions today and some surprise questions from Betsy. She's all excited. She's dredged up a lot of interesting things, she tells me. But let's hear first from one of our patrons. This is Jason, who made one of those fun discoveries that we often do when we're out hunting. Over the years, you may have been out in the middle of nowhere and come across an unusual artifact from the old days. I've found old milk cans at old homesteads. I found some interesting animal bones. A friend of mine even found a dinosaur bone once. So we're going to find out what Jason has stumbled on. He says, my son Joshua and I returned from a youth elk hunt in northern Arizona, where with tired legs, we stopped for a visit at an old homestead. And I noticed there was an old rifle cartridge partially buried in the silty red dirt. Upon picking it up, I did what all of us would do, and that's brush it off and look at the head stamp. And I was expecting it was a 30-30, and what do you suppose I read on that head stamp? It read WRA Co. 30 USG. Unfortunately, the business end of the cartridge was badly chewed by a small and sharp-toothed critter, so I was able to discern what the caliber was, but it appears to be a necked and not a straight-walled case. Somewhere deep in the back of my brain, I recalled an old cartridge by Winchester, the Winchester 30, or the 30 WCF, which turns out I wrongly assumed that this one was. Assuming it was an old lever-action saddle gun, my son and I swapped and one-upped fanciful stories, theoretical ones, about how it was fired, how it came to be there. I liked the idea of a father giving a shooting lesson to his son, but my son preferred a more ruckus account of a Prohibition-era bootleg operation shootout with deputies and state agents. The reality will never be known, but he or she was likely doing exactly what we were doing and simply hunting out in the elk woods. It wasn't until I returned to the grid and a more reliable internet that I was able to locate more information, and according to what I could find, the WRA Co. 30 USG stamp is for a 30 Army cartridge, and that would later be known as the 30-40 Krag. And it was stamped like this from 1893 to 1911. We bring this tale to you for your insights and more information on the cartridge, what rifle options it was chambered in, and any colorful embellishments you wish to throw on it. Oh, boy. Love your content. Felt this story was worth sharing with you and other viewers. He has P.S. Upon return to our camp that evening, I found another empty cartridge. Once again, I turned it to read the stamp, and this time it was a 6.5 Creedmoor. Yeah, the things go around from the 1890s until the 2020s, and we're looking at 30-40 Krags and now Creedmoors. If you guys are ever out looking at old cartridges and stuff like that, do take note of those head stamps. They've changed a lot over the years. The 30-30 Winchester was originally the 30 Winchester Centerfire, WCF. But Marlin loaded the exact same thing, and sometimes they called it the 30-30 Marlin. They had several names for it. So over the years, our cartridges have changed names. Another good example, in 1955, Remington came out with the 244 Remington. Boy, you don't find many of those, but they later changed the name to 6mm Remington. That's a little more well-known. And then there was the 280 Remington that was changed for very briefly to the 7mm /6, and then very quickly changed to the 7mm Express, and then back to the 280 Remington again. So lots of fun things out there that one can learn by reading the head stamps on the back of cases, old ones and new. So thanks for that little story, Jason, and I really appreciated hearing about you and your son out there doing more than just hunting when you're hunting, which really is what all of us do. We're exploring. I always figure that hunting is sort of exploring for the ultimate mysteries of life, nature. You just find realistic things out on the ground, but you also discover things in your head that you might not think about in everyday life. But just being out there starts new ideas flowing, and it's just a wonderful way to get in touch with yourself. All right. Now, this is Richard, another patron, and he's the one confused about side-mounted scopes. If you have ever seen an old lever-action Winchester, especially the Model 94s, you'll sometimes find them with a bracket on the side of the action on the left side on which you can mount a scope. I saw one on a Mosin Nagant Russian military rifle one time. Same thing, it had this bracket off on the side, so the scope was not perfectly in line with the bore left to right. It was off to the side. So Richard has questions about that. Ron, I'm confused about scopes mounted to the side of an action that aren't mounted directly on top of the receiver, like the action of the Winchester Model 94, or an M1 Garand, M1C, or an M1D sniper variant. My confusion has to deal with the distance you set the zero at, say 50 meters. And is there any different windage differences that may occur at longer distance, say 150 meters? Does the impact of the round shift from left to right at other distances than your zero? Because the scope doesn't mount vertically with the center line of the bore. Well, as you can guess, I have that problem with a Model 94 in 30-30. Any wisdom you can share on this topic is greatly appreciated. The backstory on the rifle, it is not a pre-64, but it appears to be a 1972 manufactured rifle. It is in excellent shape, and it does not appear to be shot very much. I had a scope mount on it without the scope. I found a fairly nice 2-7x32 Weaver wide view scope to mount on it to make it look more like the period in which the rifle was made. It's just a project gun, but it's a good shooter, and I loved your last podcast, by the way. It didn't put me to sleep. Thanks for everything you do. Well, thank you, Richard. And yeah, that's a good point about that side-mounted scope. Now, I'm not an expert on this. I'm just using common sense here, what little I have. But if you have a bore or barrel, obviously lined straight down the line where your eye is looking, your bullet is going to vary from that vertically. You're going to shoot a little bit up so that you can get your bullet farther down range before it falls under your target. So your bullet's going to rise and then fall, but ideally, if you have an accurate rifle and barrel, it will be following the bore line as well as the sight line. They're both together. Windage, of course, can move your bullet left and right, and so can inaccuracy. But now let's move that scope off to the left side. Let's just say an inch to make it simple. Now you've got two parallel lines of departure. One is the visual with your scope, and the other is that bullet's line of departure just off to the right of your sight line. How are you going to ever get that bullet to hit the sight line? You're going to have to adjust your reticle so that it crosses the bullet's flight path, but it can only cross it at one point. Think about it. With a traditional scope on top of the barrel, your bullet crosses the line of sight going up because you're aiming it higher. It arches over it a certain distance and then starts falling back through it, so you cross it twice. Left to right, not going to happen because there's nothing pulling that bullet left or right. The wind might blow it. Let's just discard that for now. But without that, your bullet is going to continue in the line of its bore, whereas your sight line continues on your sight line. So they're going to converge at one point. You suggested 50 meters. Let's play 100 yards. Most of us are used to that for a sight-in distance. So if you adjust your reticle on that side-mounted scope so that your bullet and it cross at 100 yards, that would be zeroing it for 100 yards. But after that, your bullet's going to continue going straight while your line of sight is continuing to go off to the right. So at 200 yards, I would imagine you're probably going to be an inch off target. You started an inch to the left, you dead on at 100, and now you're an inch to the right, I would think at 200. And at 300, you'd probably move another inch off to the right. And it would continue going farther and farther right. Now, I would offer that this is not a big deal for a hunting rifle. So what if I shoot an inch to the left of my game at 100 yards, or an inch to the right at 200 yards, or even 2 inches to the right at 300 yards? You're pretty much in the vital zone. Most of these side mount scopes are going to be on a lever action like the old Winchesters. Some of the militaries, like what you mentioned with the Garand M1 and the Mosin Nagant that I had. But I don't think any of those are set up for extreme range shooting where you really need to worry about that divergence of the bullet from your line of sight, line of bullet flight kind of a thing. To me, that explains it. If I've got it wrong, anyone else out there has a better idea or understand it more fully than that, let us know. But it seems to make sense to me. You are definitely going to have only one point at which your visual sight and your bullet's line of flight are lining up perfectly. All right, let's see. Dav says, I hope you are well. What kind of a scope do you use on your rimfire rifle to hunt upland birds and grouse? I'm hunting ruffed grouse in New Brunswick, Canada. I have a vintage VX2 2-7 power. Could I mount that on my Henry 22? What would be your top recommendation for a scope? Dave, or Dav. Dav, I would say what I would do is get a parallax adjustable scope. I really think a 22 rimfire for precision hunting of squirrels or shooting grouse in the head, you've got tiny little targets. They're not usually very far away, inside of 50 yards, usually inside of 30. Most scopes are set to be focused at 100 to 150 yards, big game hunting scopes. This is parallax or parallax adjustment. So if you get a scope that has a parallax adjustment dial, you are able to essentially focus it at closer and closer ranges, which is what you need with a 22. And the higher the magnification of your scope, the more the focus matters. You really see things as being blurry and out of focus at 8 power or 10 power, not so much at 4 and under. So if you're keeping a low power scope, it really doesn't matter. But boy, when I am trying to do precision shooting at those tiny little targets, I want a scope magnification cranked up so I can really see what I'm aiming at. So I like to have that parallax adjustment. And the scopes that I found worked really well for it. It's a loophole. I think you call it the VX Freedom these days. Used to be called a VX1 if I remember right, but it has an adjustable focus or parallax adjustment out on the end of the objective bell externally, and you can dial that, I think, to focus as close as 20 yards. Some of these will even come as close as 10 yards. So look for a scope that will let you focus inside of about 20 yards and even 10. I don't think it has to be closer than 20 yards because then you're close enough to your target that you don't need 8 to 10x magnification. 4x is plenty. But that's the idea behind it, and that's what I like in a 22 rimfire scope. Hope that helps you out. Now, let's see. We've got someone, this is not a patron, but this is Eddie, who said, can someone explain straight wall laws to me for hunting? What the H? Why is this BS a requirement? He is upset. Well, Eddie, this is pretty simple. What he's referring to, of course, straight wall laws, he means straight wall cartridge laws. Like, where's a straight wall in front of me here? Here's a straight wall cartridge. Here's another straight wall cartridge. And to compare them, here is a bottlenecked cartridge. So if your cartridge has a bottleneck on it, in some jurisdictions, some states, you're not allowed to go deer hunting with that. Their laws specify that your cartridge has to have straight walls. And now Eddie says, what kind of BS is this? Well, you're right, Eddie. It really is kind of BS. Let me read what I wrote back to him when I answered. I said, Eddie, simply it's that several state fish and game departments disallow bottleneck cartridges for rifle hunting of deer, and probably black bears too in some places. Ostensibly, a safety regulation is what this is, but it really has no basis in reality. Additional incentive could be the idea is minimizing the hunter's potential to hit that at which they aim at longer distances in the hopes of minimizing wounding loss. So in other words, they think, well, if we limit people to straight wall cartridges, those don't exactly have the reputation or the ability to shoot flat for a long distance, and that will discourage people from taking risky shots that they probably can't make. We don't want people trying 300-yard shots and farther, so limit them. In addition to the straight wall, I think they also specify the total length of the cartridge, and they keep them pretty short, under 2 inches. I think 1.8 inches is pretty common. So to me, that strikes me as they are just trying to regulate long-range shooting by forcing you to use cartridges that just don't reach that far. That's what all I can figure out. But it kind of started with this idea that long-reach cartridges, bottleneck cartridges like a 270 that can shoot really flat and far, could be dangerous. But it's never really proven out. I've never seen statistics that support that. You'll have one state bordering the next state, and one will allow anything, and the next one is straight wall only, and you never see any statistics where people have been accidentally shot by hunters 400, 500, 600 yards away because they were using those horrible bottleneck cartridges that are so deadly at long ranges. Just not true. But that's why the straight-walled cartridges are still popular, and we're talking about them. Some people are just restricted to using those. Okay, now we're going to hear from a lot of you. A lot of our viewers and listeners have been responding with to a question I asked about what are the popular deer cartridges in your neck of the woods, and what do you use? What are the top 3? And we're getting some really interesting comments from folks. Here is Stephen. He says, I have 2 old rifles. Number 1, a sporterized 1906 Swedish model 94 in a 6.5 by 55, and it shoots 3/4 to 1 1/4 inch. My second one is an old Remington model 788 in 6mm Remington. That shoots a 1/2 inch all day. I paid $250 for the model 94 in 6.5 by 55. Got it in a pawn shop, and I paid $200 for the 6mm. Holy mackerel. So he has got 2 rifles totaling $450, and they both shoot sub-MOA. That is pretty remarkable. It goes to show you what you can do with an inexpensive rifle. You just have to get the right one. Here is Armand. I have a Creco 222. That is the oldest rifle in my safe. I bought it secondhand, so it's also the cheapest in my safe. It shoots everything I load in it. It shot the smallest 3-shot group of my life just last week with 40 grain VMAX bullets. That group measured 6.11 millimeter at 100 meters. That is a 1/4 inch group at 100 meters. 100 yards. Wow, that's pretty impressive. And a Creco, I know that name. I think it was a Canadian-made rifle. But boy, that's that's a heck of a group for an inexpensive rifle. Good job, Armand. Here is Just Want to Be Left Alone. Okay, we'll leave you alone. Move to the next one. Galen. No, seriously, I'll come back to you here. Just Want to Be Left Alone says, I'm not sure. I don't have anything after the 1980s. I have a Model 70 in a 22-250 Remington. I've got a Remington Model 700 in a 25-06, and that's it. I'm good. Just 2. Good for you, Just Wanna. Here is Galen. He says, my 1950 Winchester Model 70 in a 270 Winchester. He's just got 1. This is the man to beware of, the one-gun hunter. Captain Milo. Hey, I'm glad I found your channel. I have a 1919 Gustav, that's Carl Gustav Swedish Mauser in a 6.5 by 55. That's the second 6.5 by 55. I hear about that cartridge a lot, especially from people who love to hate the 6.5 Creedmoor, but I don't often see them afield, but I'm really starting to hear from folks that they have them. So let's see, Captain Milo's has been sporterized with a modern stock, and he has a suppressor on it. I'm new to rifles. This has been my first one, and I'm happy with the way that it is shooting. I have a short on my channel with this rifle on it. Anyone else have a 6.5 55 Swede? I'd love to hear about it. Well, Captain Milo, you want to get a hold of Steven up there. He's got one too. Best username. He has a 1907, another Swedish Mauser in 6.5 by 55. That's 3 of them already. Betsy, did you specially pick out the 6.5 Swedes on this one?
No, not on purpose.
Well, you pulled them out some one way or another. All right, now we're going to switch to something a little more modern. This gentleman has a Mossberg. This is no name on this one, but he has a Mossberg in 243. He got it in 1975 for his 15th birthday. It will print sub-MOA all day out to 300 yards. Legion are the gophers that have met their doom at its hands. It's nothing to look at. Basic stock, kind of dinged up, worn bluing, but hot dang, can it shoot? If I had to bet my life on a single shot, it would be from this gun. Wow, he likes that Mossberg. Here is Luke, 1943 Lithgow SMLE, a Smiley, chambered in the 303, 25 groups better than any 243 I've owned since I've owned 20. Oh, he's got a 303-25. This is the 303 British, neck down to 25. I'll bet he's from New Zealand. That's real popular over there. Could be a Canadian too, but the 303 British rifle, of course, was their military Enfield rifle and went around the world. You find it in a lot of places, and folks will customize that and make wildcats out of it the same as we do with our 30-06. Grumpy says 1895 Chilean Mauser in 757. There we go. That's my favorite right now. It's a first-year production. It shoots consistently. Well, great, Grumpy. TD Hunter has a 25-06 Remington. Yep. And Bullseye has a CZ 584. It's an over and under combo. That's cool. 12-gauge barrel and a 30-06 barrel. Then there is Joe with a Ruger M77. It's a 1970 model. 6mm Remington. There we go. Shoots 2 bullets in the same hole. And the other one just touches that hole every time. Dime-sized groups. Been in my family since it was new in 1970. Deer killing machine. Well, great, Joe. Then Ethan has a 1941 Husqvarna in a 6.5 by 55 Swede. Oh my God. We're gonna retitle this whole podcast the 6.5 55 Swede Show. It is really rolling. Okay. All right, let's see what else we have here. Betsy's grabbed something from Nicholas. Spomer, I find it difficult to believe a man of your caliber would be splitting wood with a dull axe. I'm certain you've got some way to sharpen that thing, files, grinder, wheel, whatever you got, but you gotta sharpen it. We put a little video out of me splitting some wood for the annual wood supply. We put up a pretty good chunk of wood every year and heat the house with it. And everybody always comments on my inability to use a chainsaw properly, an axe properly, a hatchet properly. We better not ever show them me lighting a fire. We'll catch a whole bunch of flack for that one. Albert, this is episode 382. The dad story almost got me in tears. I think most of the people who hunt started hunting with their dads, and they keep hunting because of the feeling they experienced with their dad. I know I loved to hunt with my dad when I was young, and I lost him at the age of 7. I'm 19 now. Afterwards, I kept on hunting, and I taught myself the stuff I wish he had taught me through watching videos like yours and shooting with my air rifle. We live on a farm in South Africa, and sometimes I just take the rifle without bullets and go looking for warthogs because just being there in the field makes me feel so close to my dad. I load my own ammo and I shoot everything with my 22-250 from geese to waterbuck. Thanks for the great videos and a heartfelt way that you make them. Well, Albert, sorry about losing your dad at such a young, tender age, but you've got some wonderful memories and feelings for him, and he's still impacting your life. I think that's important for us all to recognize how our fathers and mothers and grandfathers and other elders in our lives can set us on a path and guide us even after they're gone. And that's pretty special. Thanks for writing in. This is Ether. He's talking about popular deer cartridges. He says, greetings from Bush, Alaska. None of the modern cartridges are available for sale because there's no demand for them. Well, maybe not up in your neck of the woods, but boy, down here they sure are. This is Barry, and he is talking about inexpensive versus expensive scopes. I cover that several times in my videos. Barry says, why buy an expensive rifle just to slap a cheap scope on it? Why buy a cheap rifle and slap a high-dollar scope on it? Well, I steer away from cheap altogether. If I'm spending money, I want quality. Otherwise, it's not worth my time. Well, Barry, I hear you, and that is a good philosophy if you can afford it. You got to realize, though, not everyone is a multimillionaire. Not that you have to be to get good quality in rifles and optics, but as we've already read, there are so many people who have found these $200 rifles and they shoot better than some of my really expensive rifles. So it's not the cost of the rifle or even the scope that always determines its performance. So I think it's still good advice to get the best that you can afford if you can identify that. But that's one of the other challenges, especially with rifles. You find these inexpensive rifles that shoot so darn well you would never think they would based on the price. So sometimes the inexpensive ones can outperform their price tags. But I do think it's probably a good idea to go with a higher priced scope, just because of the abuse it takes. When you think about those instruments and how finely tuned they are to make these micro adjustments and then hold that setting during all the recoil and in and out of the vehicles and dropping the rifle and all the things that happen out there, scope needs to be pretty rugged. And I value rugged in a scope much more than super high quality optical quality. I love optical quality. As a photographer and a hunter who uses spotting scopes and binoculars, I definitely appreciate good optical quality. But in a rifle scope, optical quality doesn't do you any good if the scope isn't durable and strong enough to retain job one, which is keeping itself pointed where your bullet goes. It needs to retain zero at all costs. So I will often settle for a little bit poorer quality optically to get the good rugged reliability in that scope, something you might want to consider.
Ron, remember when you went to Africa and the scope didn't work? You had an extra scope?
Oh, yeah. I did have an inexpensive scope that time, and it was my first hunt in Africa. And after a couple of shots with a big boomer, it was a 330 Dakota, a little more powerful than a 338 Win Mag. And the inexpensive scope suffered a lens setback. The reticle in modern scopes is a glass, and it's etched. And that's how they get all those numbers and extra lines and things in there. It's no longer a piece of wire or spider web and the things they used back in the day. And that's what this one had. But they had it, I suspect, glued in instead of fixed in with a bracket and screws. So it broke loose, shifted back from the recoil. Or forward, I'm not sure which way it went. But at any rate, the focus was way off. By turning my diopter on the eyepiece way out, I was able to get it clear enough to go hunting successfully. I went 12 for 12 on animals after that, but initially, I thought we were in big trouble. That particular adventure taught me to always bring along a backup scope. I will have relatively inexpensive scope, or at least a smaller scope, 4X maybe, whatever I happen to have around. I will set that up in rings that mount on that rifle's mounting system. Quick release is what I usually use, and I like tallies. They're really simple. So both scopes will have tally quick release mounts on them. I'll zero both of them, use the main one, and if something should happen that goes wrong with it, all I have to do is twist it off, twist the other one on, and I'm back in business. So I use a fairly small light scope so it doesn't take up a lot of room and etc., and I'm still able then to hunt. So something you might want to consider. Good point there, Betts. Yeah, let's see, where are we here? W.S. Bill. It annoys me when people complain about various cartridges when they all do more or less what they're designed to do. If you are bummed because your 30-30 can't kill a moose from 350 yards, it's your fault because that thing was designed to excel at short distances. People are beaching because average-sized people can't dunk a basketball, and that's not very bright. So, good point here, Bill. So, Bill is saying is, all these cartridges do exactly what they're advertised to do. You just have to understand their velocity, the energies that they put out and all this stuff, and then hunt within those means. Don't complain about the darn thing because it doesn't reach a mile. Get one that does if that's what you want to do. But if you enjoy hunting at close range and you like the challenge of a 30-30 or even an old 44-40 Winchester, just know that that's the tool you've chosen. Just like a bow hunter, he knows he's not going to be taking 300-yard shots. So same thing with your cartridge. Don't complain about it. Just hunt with what you've got. Dance with the one what brung you. Okay, here's somebody else grousing at me for chopping wood, it looks like. Gotta find yourself a more solid foundation than that bouncy blanket. Oh, the video we shot was I was on a hillside taking this tree that had fallen over, great big maple tree, and the rounds were just big and heavy. And rather than picking those things up and taking them down to the ranger and hauling them back to the yard and then chopping them, I thought I'm just going to chop them right here, easier to handle. Well, let me rephrase that. Easier for Betsy to handle because she does all the heavy lifting around here. So I'm standing on a slope and I'm splitting these things, and they're a little bit green yet. I probably should have left this for another year or waited until cold weather when they split. If there's a little bit of moisture in that wood and it freezes, it spans and it's ready to split pretty easily. So it's another option. But then again, they're out there in the woods and I'm here at the house and I don't want to pick these big rounds up. So I thought, there are not that very many of them. I'm just going to split them right here. And that's where the one guy was complaining about me having a dull axe, which by the way wasn't an axe. It's a splitting maul. I don't want an axe that's sharp that bites into the thing and then you can't get it out. I want a fairly dull wedged maul that just uses force to split that thing. At any rate, that's why it wasn't very sharp. Didn't come sharp from the factory. But as far as the foundation, actually, Michael's right. If you can put your rounds on a good hard surface, when you come down, the energy is transferred to the split, not absorbed by the ground. But again, I just needed to get this work done out there on that hillside, and that's all I had. It wasn't a perfect setup. It was just temporary. Now you guys are all looking out for me. I wish you'd come and help me split this wood. It'd be a lot easier. And you could teach me how to do it. Here is RJ. Not sure why a guy doesn't get one of them gas hydraulic splitters to save your back. Here we go again. Now, I've answered this one before.
I put those in because I like that idea.
Yeah, Betsy, you got people on your side here. They're ganging up on me, everybody. But I have an honest answer for why I do not get a hydraulic splitter. Grandpa Ron is not going to continue to be able to split logs if he doesn't occasionally split logs the old-fashioned way. It keeps me in shape. This is my gymnasium. I don't hop in my car and burn up a bunch of gas driving to town to some fancy let's all work out place wearing spandex. I go in the woods and I cut wood and I chop wood and I drag rocks off the field and I work on the fence. I'm a rancher. I don't have any cattle, but I'm a rancher and I've got flies. That's what I've got. Oh, all right. Home Alone. Oh, gosh, another one. There's got to be a good caliber for splitting logs. Well, at least Home Alone's got a sense of humor. You know, I knew some guys that once split a log with a caliber. They were out in South Dakota. I think they were prairie dog hunting. And they came across a cottonwood tree that had fallen across a trail, and it was steep banks on both sides. And to get across it, they had to chop that cottonwood tree. They didn't have a saw, they didn't have an axe, but they had a lot of ammunition. And they shot that cottonwood through with 223s. I don't remember how many 100 rounds it took, but that was pretty crazy. Okay. Brady is asking something about cold and altitude affecting trajectory. What is the application that you use to build these charts, kind sir? Great question, Brady. Ballistic calculators, guys, they're online. There are many of them. Just search for ballistic calculator, and it'll kick up a whole bunch of them. I mostly use shooterscalculator.com. It pretty much does everything I want it to do. It kicks out all sorts of information. It'll give me the recoil of a rifle with a certain load. It'll give me the maximum point-blank range, and then all the ballistic calculations for drop and wind deflection at different elevations and different temperatures and different humidity levels, and all the environmental factors that change your bullet's trajectory based on air drag. That's what it's all about. It's the shape of the bullet, the mass of the bullet, and then how much atmosphere it has to plow its way through. That's what makes all the changes. And then the wind blowing, of course. Cool. Nick. Ron, as we say in Australia, your blood is worth bottling? Oh, my blood is worth bottling. I get it. Thanks for all your effort, consistency, and creativity. Would you ever consider making a series on the firearm manufacturers? Who owns Browning or Sacco? What other brands do they have? How do their brands rank or posture themselves? For example, Sacco, top end, Tikka, everyday man. But then delve into their range, like the T3X series, the Alpine, etc. Do it for all the U.S. firearms first, then cover the world. You should be able to get dollars off of the manufacturers as you're providing history about their content, the family brands, and their series overview. That should catapult your views. Food for thought. Regards, Nick. Nick, you want to come work for me? We could use a good marketing manager. Well, I don't know if anybody would give me any money for it, but I like the way you're thinking. Betsy, write that down. Call all the arms and ammunition manufacturers and ask them if they'll pay us money to give a report on their history. I'd love to do it. That's a novel idea, getting paid. Wow. This is Gus talking about some of my bear hunting videos. Oh, this one was with the 4570. The guest in the video is promoting two firearms that both have major flaws. This is one with Larry, who had a 4570 lever action, and it was a Pedersoli, and then he had a cool little pistol, Gary Reeder custom revolver, 5-shot in a 475 line bar with a 2 or 2.5 inch snub-nosed barrel. And this Gus thinks something wrong with them, so let's find out what it is. Their barrels are midget-sized. Whenever you cut a barrel down from the original caliber cartridge firearm design, you, the shooter, lose velocity and energy. A 4570 government cartridge rifle should have a much longer barrel, at least 22 or 24 inches, and 26 inches is even better. Rubber is for tires, wood is for stocks. Oh, that's in reference to the rubberized finish they put around their wood stock, which makes it waterproof. The handgun that he showed, chambered in 475 line ball, is a silly little 2-inch snub nose that completely ruins the reason for that monster-sized cartridge. Massive recoil and deafening muzzle blast with a short-barreled monster cartridge. That handgun should have at least a 6-inch barrel, and an 8-inch would be better to get the full energy velocity. Stopping killing power. Years ago, the handgun hunting writer in the Guns and Ammo magazine, Bob Millick, did an experiment with one of his guns. It was a long-barreled Thompson center arms single-shot pistol. He fired it at a paper target with a chronograph device recording and measuring the muzzle velocity. Every time that he cut an inch off the barrel, the velocity of the cartridge lost about 100 feet per second, and his accuracy suffered too. Well, Gus, you're right about all that stuff, but you're missing one critical component: bear protection. These firearms were not set up to maximize their power and velocity and reach. They were set up to get on target in a split second, because when a bear charges you out of the alders or the willows in Alaska, he's usually on you like that, and you've got time for maybe 1 to 3 shots at best. You don't need to be wielding a 26-inch barrel or trying to pull an 8-inch barrel revolver out of your holster. You want something quick. That's the whole idea. Those barrels were short for a reason. Bear protection rifles. But as far as what you were saying about energy and all the rest, you're absolutely right. And you would be surprised at how long your barrels can get stretched before you actually start losing velocity. 28-inch barrel would get more velocity than your 26, and a 30 would get more. And depending on the cartridge and the powder volume and all the rest, you will continue to get more velocity with really, really long barrels. But who wants to carry them around? All right, Zevin. This saga with the Park West Arms rifle of yours has been a fantastic learning experience, especially for a dummy like me who doesn't reload and only buys ammunition. 1.5 to 2 minutes of angle did seem to me to be pretty poor. I have an AK that can shoot 1.5 MOA, just to put that in perspective. However, it is amazing to see how much of a drastic difference loads can make for accuracy. Not only did I learn a lot from this, but I also want to get into reloading just because of you and your videos. Well, thanks, Zevin. What Zevin is talking about are the several videos I've done on my beautiful Park West Arms SD10 single-shot falling block rifle chambered in a 757 Mauser. This is kind of an old man's treat rifle. It's the special rifle that I was not able to own through most of my hunting career because it's so expensive, but I treated myself to it, and Betsy helped out.
Wait, let's go back. Betsy helped out.
The important part is that Betsy got this thing upgraded to the kind of delight I wanted, but she didn't take care of this fly that's bugging me. And this rifle, when I started shooting it brand new, of course, with some factory loads, didn't shoot all that well, 1.5 inches, and people were saying, oh, what a piece of junk. I can't believe they actually charged you money for that, and they're kind of missing the whole point. But I knew what I was up against with this thing, and it's just what I wanted. I needed to build some loads and understand this rifle and tweak it and make it work, which didn't take long. I think it was the third or fourth load that I tried with different seating depths and things. I got a 0.6-inch group. I got several 1-inch groups. I mean, I got it shooting just beautifully. And I continue to tweak it. I really don't have to. It shoots more than well enough for the range at which I will be hunting with it, probably 300 yards max. I'm going to set up to be able to do a 400-yard shot. Even if I use one of the current loads I've got that groups MOA, that says I'm probably going to keep my bullets inside of a 4-inch circle at 400 yards. So a 757 Mauser can certainly do that as long as I know my drops and hold accordingly. But I want to continue to try to tweak with this little rifle and see if I can't get it to shoot consistently half MOA. And that 0.6 MOA group that I got suggests that I can get there fairly quickly, fairly easily. So I'm going to continue to mess around with it. That's half the reason that I enjoy rifles. I do not get to take them hunting enough days in the year. So I got to use them for something else, and shooting targets and working up loads and that sort of thing is much fun for me as I can get with those rifles, so I continue to experiment. Thanks for understanding that, Zevin. A lot of people didn't. They just expect a rifle, take it out of the box, and if it doesn't shoot half MOA, you throw it away, I guess. Okay, this is Mike. He's referencing rifles that I wish I hadn't sold. When I was in my mid-20s, we had just moved into a new house, and the bills were pretty high. I had a Ruger 77 in 25-06 and a Winchester Model 70 Super Grade in 270. The Winchester was so nice, I hardly ever carried it into the woods. A gentleman from a nearby town was always harassing me to sell it to him, so I let it go, and that's my biggest regret. Yeah, that would be a tough one when you remember a Super Grade 270 Winchester and you sold it. Ouch. But, we go through those periods in our lives where we can't afford it, or something has happened and we need a new furnace or refrigerator, or the car broke down and something's got to go, is often the rifle, especially if we have more than one. All right, Buck, he's got another one about something he regrets having gotten rid of. I sold a Marlin 336 in 35 Remington. It was a 100-year anniversary model. I sometimes wish I hadn't, but I wasn't going to be doing anything with it. It was too nice to drag in the woods. It went to a good home. A grandfather gave it to his grandson. Besides, I'm really looking for a Marlin Ruger to release a new one. Yeah, Buck, we just did a video on the 35 Remington. I did one comparing the 30-30, the 35 Remington, and the 360 Buckhammer as today's probably top options for lever-action deer rifles like that. They're all really surprisingly similar in their performance. And watch for that video. I think it's coming out pretty soon on my regular channel, Ron Spomer Outdoors. And you might be surprised at which one puts more energy on target at 150 yards. Yeah. Now, this idea about rifles being too nice to drag in the woods, I just don't quite get that, guys. This 757 Mauser I'm talking about has exhibition grade walnut on it. It has case hardened receiver, the gorgeous blue and gold colors swirling through it. I mean, it is an absolute showpiece, which a lot of people would call a safe queen. I don't believe in safe queens. I think rifle queens should be like bees. The queen bee is doing something. She's producing more bees. So I think my rifles should be producing more venison. I'm taking them hunting. That's the whole reason for having a rifle, is to shoot it. If I want to look at something, I could just take a picture of a $30,000 rifle and stare at that all day. That'd be my safe queen.
That's not $30,000.
No, my rifle's not $30,000. I'm blowing it way out here. I have seen some guns at the SHOT Show with price tags of $300,000 on them. Just saying. We all have our price points. But hey, take those safe queens out, guys. Gosh, those rifles are raring to go. They deserve to get out in the field and do some hunting, and you deserve to enjoy them. That's what you got them for. Okay, TDJ. This one's about my single shot again. I am now eating crow. Doesn't taste too bad. So he saw my most recent video in which I shot those tight groups with a rifle. Earlier, he must have said, throw it away, it's a piece of junk. And now he's saying he's eating crow because now it shoots well. Well, thanks for admitting that, TJ. You're a big man to do that. A lot of guys would just crawl into a hole and pretend they never said that in the first place. Gimpy. What does Gimpy have to say? I gave up hunting twice. First because of uncontrollable pain, and second time because after I had surgery that controlled the pain, I went out with a friend deer hunting and promptly had a stroke the night before opening day. My doctor told me to quit hunting because it would most likely kill me soon. Oh my gosh. I was referred to a palliative care specialist who verified that hunting would probably kill me. But he said that if I died doing something I loved, at least I'd die happy. Thanks to his advice, I now hunt every chance I get. I now hunt sitting in a wheelchair, hence the Gimpy moniker here, but I'm still alive and I'm doing great with no plans to give up my hobby. All right, Gimpy, that is a great attitude. I love it. Die happy, and here you're out being happy, and you're not dying. You're enjoying it. Great. More power to you. I hope you get your game. I hope you enjoy every hunt this year and every year from here on out. Good for you. All right, here's one from Tarmac. Might be a good idea to point out that some military powders actually increase in potency as they age. Hence, some old surplus ammunition may perform erratically or even cause a rapid, unscheduled disassembly, much like Scott at Kentucky Ballistics experienced. I don't know if they ever narrowed that incident down, but that would be my guess. Kentucky Ballistics, yeah, this gentleman fired an old 50, pretty sure it was a 50 caliber, 50 BMG cartridge. I don't know which type, and I don't remember what rifle he shot it in, but it kablooied and severed his carotid, if I remember right.
Not as carotid,
but he was able to put pressure on it. His dad was there, was able to drive him to the hospital and nip and tuck, but he survived. But I'm not sure that was because of the powder increasing in potency. I have never heard that powder increases in potency, only the latter. But I may be wrong. Anybody have really good, solid information on that? I do know that cartridges from World War II era or even before, if they have been kept in reasonable conditions, not too hot like in an attic and not subjected to a bunch of moisture, if the cartridge externally still looks good, it's pretty much waterproof and the powder in it is going to be viable. If you shake things a lot, that powder will eventually get degraded by essentially sanding against itself. And then if you let air into it, it'll degrade too. But if you keep the air out and the temperature's low, powder pretty much lasts for decades and decades. I don't know exactly how long, but I've never heard that it got dangerously explosive. Anybody out there who's got good, solid information on that, though, we'd sure like to hear it. Oh, first thing they have up is, this is different. These are some comments right here on the YouTube channel. And this one, D.T. Hunter, 25-06 Remington, says, Ron reminds me of an old friend of mine. Ron is as real as they come. Boy, wait till he finds out I'm AI generated. I like his content. It has a balanced, logical reaction to critics. Good luck, Ron. Well, thank you. But actually, I am the real Ron here. I'm not yet an AI. What, Betsy?
This is regards to the post I put up regarding...
You put it up.
I put it up. I wanted you to be nominated for the Gundry's Award, which you think is silly.
Silly, yes. You put me up for the Gundry Awards?
Yeah. You were up last year.
That's what this is about. Okay, here it is. Yep, Betsy appealed to everybody to nominate me for the Gundy Award. She wants me to win a Gundy Award. Does it come with a cash prize?
No.
Oh, well, yes. Guys, I am not going to toot my own horn and say, vote for me for the Gundy Awards or the Academy Awards or anything else, because I don't think I deserve it, but Betsy does.
I do. And we went last year to the award ceremony, which you didn't go because you had another engagement at the SHOT Show, and we were a fish out of water, I'll tell you.
A fish out of water?
Yeah, remember everybody was...
Yeah, I saw the folks going in there, and they were Pretty wild bunch. Young and wild. Grandpa Ron didn't feel at home on that one. Well, but Betsy stayed, and I guess you enjoyed the show, didn't you?
I was surprised how interesting and how much work people who are online on YouTube for their channels do. I mean, it's a lot of work, as we know.
Folks, if you've never heard of the Gundy Awards, and you probably haven't, but it's sort of like the Academy Awards for gun hunting, shooting people who have YouTube channels.
Not shooting people.
Not shooting people? No. Shooting people. People who shoot, not shooting people.
Well, that's what it is.
Language. Punctuation matters. At any rate, they have this award banquet, and they try to sort of emulate the Hollywood award deals, red carpets and all this kind of stuff. And this was why I feel uncomfortable, and I think it's silly, but Betsy thinks it's kind of cool. And I guess she met some really serious people who were doing some wonderfully good things for gun rights and teaching hunting kind of the way I do. But there were also some explosive types there, and I don't know yet. I don't follow that many other YouTube channels. I'm too busy making our own and then trying to escape to go on a hunt now and then. But Betsy was pretty impressed with the number of YouTube channels that were out there and the audience that they have. They're just a whole bunch of folks doing a lot of crazy things, I guess. So, hey, as long as it keeps people interested in firearms and helps us maintain our Second Amendment rights, and we're using those firearms properly and responsibly, I can get behind that. So, at any rate, Betsy's now agitating for me to win this award somehow.
What?
Say what?
For the best outdoorsman.
The best outdoorsman? Well, then I don't even qualify. Okay, so you want me to read a bunch of... I'm not going to read all of these.
No.
Okay.
Only the ones that said something nice.
Oh, I see the one you want me to read right here. Diogenes writes in and says, Betsy, you are the best thing in Ron's life. He is a most blessed man to have you. Did you write that?
No, but I wanted you to read that.
Well, Diogenes or Diogenes, I guess that's how you pronounce that. Thank you for that, and you're correct. Betsy is an absolute blessing to me, and I am fortunate to have her. She keeps me on the straight and narrow.
And working all the time.
Yeah, she keeps me working all the time. That's the problem. I want to retire, and she wants to crank it up. Oh, I like this one. Ron is my hero. He made me fall in love with the sport of hunting, and he improved my life in so many ways. Victor. Wow, thanks, Victor. I like that. It makes me feel good to think that I've had a positive influence on folks, and because of me, they took up hunting, and it's improved their life. I mean, that's pretty cool.
You can go to the other ones.
Okay, let's go to the other ones. The trick questions. Ben from Iowa, where the tall corn grows. I am looking to upgrade my rifle. I'm not going to build a custom rifle. It's too expensive. But I would be willing to spend like $2,000 on a rifle. Boy, that's pretty expensive too there, Ben. A lot of folks would say that's like twice what they want to spend, or 2.5 times. What caliber would you suggest? Uses would be mule deer hunting, possibly pronghorn, maybe up to elk. Plus, at distance shooting, I'm kind of eyeing a 280 AI, a 7PRC, and I really like that 6.8 Western. Where I get tripped up is I don't see as much market support for the 6.8 as the 7PRC. The 280 AI is really intriguing to me. I've watched a lot of your videos singing its praises, and I've done some research on it. More videos, more rifles are being chambered in 280 AI, as I would guess that's at least partly due to folks like you and Von Benedict talking about them. So do you have any wisdom for me? I would appreciate it. I will clarify that I would like this rifle to be on the lighter side. That does not need to be less than 6 pounds or anything crazy, but maybe the Bergara Crest, the Savage 110 Ultralight, and the new Weatherby 307 Alpine CT. Those are 3 that I've been looking at for reference. Ben, I think you're narrowing it down pretty nicely here with those rifle choices. I wouldn't have said I would have been too excited about the Savage 110 Ultralight, except for there was a gentleman at our elk boot camp a month or so ago who had one, and it was shooting lights out, and it really was light. I didn't think they could make a Savage that light. He absolutely loved it, and he impressed me. So I do know the Bergara rifle, that's a good option, and that Weatherby 307 Alpine is a sweet one too. So any of those are going to do you just fine. But the cartridges, gosh, they're almost peas in a pod. There's not that much difference in performance among the three. The 280 AI and the 6.8 probably will have fewer options for factory-loaded ammunition compared to the 7 PRC. But right now, that 7 PRC is catching a lot of flack from folks because certain Hornady loads, if not all, I haven't tested all of them, but I've done a couple, they are shooting about 100 to 150 feet per second more slowly than advertised on the box. But other people are telling me that the federal loads for the PRC are up to speed. So I think the cartridge is certainly able to shoot at the advertised speed. And Hornady says that they just can't get the powder that they initially used to get that velocity. If that comes back online, that would then be there. If you don't want to mess around with that, you want to just go with that 6.8 Western, that is the one that 7 PRC people are moving to instead of the PRC if they're having this issue. But you're right. I think right now the only ammo is going to be from Winchester and Browning. And I'm sure that Winchester is loading the Browning ammunition. I'm not sure which different bullets they're having on those. They have great loads. I've shot several of them. And the only thing that I wish they had were some better copper bullets because I love to hunt with copper. But yeah, you're on the right track here. I think ultimately you're going to do all right with that 6.8 Western. At first, I thought maybe it wasn't going to make it, but when the 7 PRC issue popped up, so many people started grabbing that 6.8 Western that I think it's picking up steam now and it's going to continue. And even if it doesn't, get one, get the ammunition that works in it and stack up on it, and I think you're going to be fine for a lifetime. I would think that, well, I'd like to think that it sticks around because it's one of the best short-action 270s. It'll do more than the 270 regular Winchester, which I love. It'll do a little more in a short action. So what the heck, why not? But again, any of those are going to do just fine for you. The 280 AI, I think I maybe oversell it a little bit. Sort of Joseph Von Benedict. We both love it and have done really well with it. But, it's only 150 feet per second or so faster than the 280 Remington, which makes it about 100 to 150 feet per second slower than the 7 Rem Mag or the PRC. So it's right there in the wheelhouse with them. It's just that it's essentially the 30-06 neck down to 280 and 40-degree shoulder and all. It's a fun little cartridge. Whatever one you pick, I think you're going to love it. But I would recommend getting into hand loading because regardless what is available on the market and what the velocities are from the store-bought ammo and all the rest of it, you will be able to tailor your loads for optimum performance. So I'd say go for it. All right, now we're going to go all the way to Idaho to talk to Matthew. Hello, Ron. I really enjoy your videos. Thanks for those. I recently bought a Ruger M77 Tang Safety, that's the old model, in a 338 Winchester Magnum, and I bought one box of ammo, all they had. My question is, I'm looking at different bullets. What would be a good bullet at a decent price for elk hunting that won't burn too big a hole in my wallet and it'll work on elk? Thanks, Matt. Boy, Matt, I have not priced 338 Win Mag ammo lately. Here's the deal with 338s and cup and core bullets versus controlled expansion bullets. I'm always telling folks to go with a controlled expansion bullet for elk because they're a bigger animal with big bones and you want assured deeper penetration, which is what you get with a bonded bullet, a partition style bullet, or an all copper bullet. But once you get up to a 338 Magnum or a 338 caliber, you've got enough diameter in that bullet that it seems to hold together better, even if it's the old cup and core. It's just got more mass to start with. Get a long one, 225 grains up to 250 grains, and you will increase the probability of an inexpensive cup and core bullet performing quite well on elk. That seems to have been the performance over the decades for a lot of hunters as well. So that's how you might save some money. Get any of the traditional cup and core bullets in a heavy weight in that 338 Win Mag, and I think you can do okay. I would still go for a behind the shoulder shot, go for the heart lungs area, but I don't think that bullet is going to fail to penetrate and get your elk if you hit it smack on the shoulder and hit a significant bone or muscle mass. Otherwise, do go for the controlled expansion things. The least expensive ones will probably be your bonded bullets like the Federal Fusion. That one seems to be pretty consistently accurate, and it is bonded, but it's not as stout as something like the Swift Sirocco, for instance, or probably the Nosler AccuBond. Personally, I just go with the Barnes TTSX LRX or the Hammer Hunters. I've really been loving those for the last 3 years. And just so many of these all copper bullets now that are so beautifully designed and so consistently accurate. And because they're a little bit lighter per length, I can shoot a lighter weight one, get just as much penetration, and drive it a little bit faster. I really like that. So that's what you want to consider. But those will probably cost you a little more too. Dan from Virginia. Ron, thanks for being the educator of all pertaining to shooting and hunting. I very much enjoy your podcast and videos on YouTube. Like others, on occasion, I use them for sleeping medicine, but mostly for learning more about our sport. Well, thank you for being able to take it both ways. My question is about the controlled expansion bullets constructed of a lead core surrounded by a copper jacket ending with a solid copper base. I have used both Federal Swift Sirocco 2 and Federal Fusion factory ammunition. Both perform well out of my 30-06 with tighter groups with the Fusion ammo. The question is, should we treat the thicker copper jacketed bullets the same as solid copper bullets in regards to a thorough cleaning to remove all copper to improve accuracy when going from one bullet type to the other? Good question, Dan. I hadn't really thought about that. I tend to think no, but I haven't experimented with it. So anyone out there who has, here's the issue. When you take a standard cup and core bullet, a Federal Soft Point, Winchester Power Point, Core-Lokt from Remington, and you shoot those in your rifle, and then you say, I think I'm going to try a copper bullet. And you shoot the copper, and the accuracy really sucks. It's probably because you're shooting it over a barrel fouled with the gilding metal jackets you've already shot. Clean that out. Down to bare metal, start over using only copper bullets, and almost all the time the accuracy is right there. Sub-MOA. Just fantastic stuff. I still don't have a good solid answer as to why. Many of us are thinking it's because those copper bullets, unlike the lead core bullets, cannot squeeze down to slightly different variations in the diameter of the bore. You get this long rifle bore, and you're going to have fractions of a fraction of an inch difference in the diameter of that bore for its length. So you end up squeezing your bullets a little bit. Well, the lead can get squeezed down, obturate. And the copper probably can't because it's solid. Now, the solution is to minimize the copper that actually touches the bore. Essentially, you're looking at a bore rider bullet. So the bullet is about the size of the lands of the bore, and the rim or the ridges that are cranked around it, what would you call that? Like the Barnes ringed bullets, the TTSX and the LRX and the TSX, they have those relief grooves around them. Those surface areas extend out to reach the bottom of the rifling grooves, and you would have sort of a bore rider. Some copper bullets are built with just one ring that sticks out and reaches inside of the grooves, bottoms of the grooves to seal the gases. Others have 2 or 3. I don't think the Barnes is actually built that way, that those rings stick out farther. Theirs are more designed to give some relief grooves in which the stripped powder or copper can move, and that enhances accuracy. All of those ringed bullets like that are more accurate than the straight old-fashioned copper bullets from back in the 80s and 90s. It seems to really help with the accuracy, but it seems to help with reducing the pressures as well, and it makes them more accurate. So I think that's probably what's going on with these all-copper bullets, is that they just don't get obturated to fit the variables in the bore, and then the copper fouling from your gilding metal bullets along with the carbon fouling builds up and maybe influence it somehow to make them a little less accurate. I don't really know. So you've got a really good question here. Who has the answer? I have not experimented with this. It would strike me that if you're looking at those copper jacketed bullets, like say the Swift A-frame, they're using pure copper on the jacket, but they've got lead inside, but it's a really thick jacket. So is that going to have the same inaccuracy issues? And even that Sirocco, the Sirocco bullet is fused, but they've got a pretty thick jacket on that as well. Maybe that's why it wasn't as accurate in your rifle as your Federal Fusion. This is something you guys can be working at. If you've got these bullets and can make these comparison tests, I'd say go for it. I'm going to try to remember to do that down the line here. But right now, I don't have the absolute answer for it. I'll look forward to hearing from anybody out there who's done the experiments. This is Hugh from Oregon. Ron, this is good. Why don't you make a scale when sighting in an open-sighted 30-30? Just put a piece of masking tape on the barrel right against the point of the long sight bar and mark the center with a Sharpie or a pen. Now you have a reference point. Fire and check. Now tap the sight over a bit and you'll know how far you've moved it. Fire and check. Move it again if needed. Mark those where the sight is now. Tap, fire, check again. I think you've got the idea. You'll have the rifle sighted in for windage quickly this way. Sincerely, Hugh. Yeah, Hugh, I've heard that several times, especially right after I did that video on zeroing the 30-30. I didn't make those marks. I just tapped it and guessed. And that is a sloppy way to do it. Having a marker index like that is simple. It's brilliant, but it's so simple. Duh. Why didn't I think of that? But that's the way to do it. Just have some kind of a reference mark on your barrel. And then you'll tap and see that you've moved a fraction of an inch this way or that, and you'll know. So great tip. Everybody remember that. If you're zeroing open sights and you have to tap that open sight that slid into that dovetail in the barrel, just put a piece of tape in front of it with some markers on it so you can see how much you've moved it when you've tapped it. Neil from Wisconsin recently saw your video on grizzly bear attacks and armed defense. Had asked if you've ever read the book Undaunted Courage, the story of Lewis and Clark's expedition by Stephen E. Ambrose. Boy, I sure have. I've read it at least 2 times. I just love that. I love all of those stories of the Old West. This book tells about the hardy group encountering grizzlies for the first time, and they soon learned that only a headshot would stop them. Can you imagine having to stop a charging grizzly with a flintlock rifle? Turns out grizzly skulls are not much thicker than a human's, so it's still your best chance of making a one-shot stop. I would love to hear your thoughts on the concept. Thanks. Yeah, one-shot brain shot on a charging grizzly, the average is probably not going to hit it. But if you can, that's where you want to put the bullet. You cannot stop a grizzly bear or a brown bear or really even an elk with a heart-lung shot instantly. That is not killing an animal instantly because you do not need a heart and lungs for your brain to keep telling your nervous system to do its thing. You've got to run out of oxygen in your brain, and that takes a while. So if you want to stop something instantly, you do need to make a central nervous system hit, brain or spinal column forward of the shoulders. For some reason, behind the shoulders, it just incapacitates the back half of the animal. So he doesn't have the use of its hind legs anymore. But if you get in front of it anywhere along the spine, they're down. They can't move, and usually just dead instantly. So I do not want to take on a grizzly bear with a flintlock rifle. Oh, yeah. Yeah, a lot of fun things happened back in those days. Betsy decided they got to wrap this up. So, we've got Tim and Bailey and Ben. We're going to have to put you guys off till next time. Looks like some good stuff here. Yeah, this guy especially wants to come out and hunt the West by himself, and he's worried about grizzly bears. Let's get to Ben next time. Hey, everybody. Thanks again. I went a little bit long. I hope you don't mind. Betsy had to get her licks in today and get those credits for being the best wife ever. I don't really
Absolutely.
know. Huh?
Yeah, of course.
Ooh, sweet music. It's time for Comment of the Week. Betsy, who is our Comment of the Week?
The comment I liked is a 19-year-old young gentleman from South Africa who remembers his dad taking him hunting at 7.
Yeah.
And the reason is we don't know how we influence the next generation. We have no idea.
Albert.
Yes.
Yeah, Albert, 19-year-old Albert, who remembers hunting with his dad before his dad passed away when he was just 7 years old. And he still feels his dad. It still influences him. He goes out hunting because of the memories. Yeah, that's an important point. We're going to definitely give it to Albert. And I would say to everyone out there, do remember the mentors who got you involved in hunting and shooting. I'm sure you do, but a lot of times we get busy with life and we tend to forget about how exactly did I get to this point in my life? Who influenced me? For me, it was several of my cousins and my uncles, not my dad. My dad was a baseball player and he influenced me in sports and baseball and singing and many, many things, but he really wasn't a hunter. But he indulged us. He let my brother and me hunt because he could tell that we had a passion for it. And when he could, he worked long, long, long hours. But every once in a while, he would break away and take us to the field and just leave us off somewhere and then come and pick us up. And he was always excited to hear our stories, what we had found and didn't find and what we had shot. And he would help butcher it. He was a commercial butcher. So he taught us how to take care of meat and all the good stuff. So got a lot of great memories of my dad too. So, hey, anyone else out with some really wonderful memories about a grandfather, an uncle, an aunt, dad, mom, brother, even good friends next door. You just never know who is going to be the mentor who sets you on your path. If you've got some great stories to share with us, we'd love to read them here on Ron Spomer Outdoors Podcast. Please send them in. Until next time, do all your hunting honestly and shoot straight. We'll see you next time.